Welcome back to the show. We will not leave this nation at the mercy of YouTube and Facebook. Those were the words from Turkiye's Prime Minister Tayyip Erdogan. That happened this week. Now, Erdogan says the websites, quote, encourage every kind of immorality and espionage for their own ends. As you can imagine, those words have created quite a bit of controversy in that country. Here's more on that story.
Turkish Prime Minister Tayyip Erdogan is threatening to block Facebook and YouTube. He's trying to stop his political enemies from posting audio recordings that show corruption in his inner circle.
Myself and some of my friends, not all of them, we are determined on this subject. We will not leave this nation at the mercy of YouTube and Facebook.
In audio posted on YouTube Thursday, Erdogan purportedly is heard berating a newspaper owner about an article and suggesting the journalist be fired. Erdogan says the postings are part of a campaign to discredit him and wreck his government. But Turkish President Abdullah Gül has ruled out a ban.
Platforms like YouTube and Facebook are worldwide. The closure of them is out of the question. Authorities could block access to material on such sites if a person's privacy is violated.
There was no immediate reaction from Facebook or YouTube.
We continue our discussions with Dee Dee Benkie, Sebastian Aulich, and Dr. Alexander Mirescu. Wow, can you imagine if they tried to do that in the U.S.?
Yeah, good luck with that.
I don't know can you just imagine? But 34 million Facebook users in Turkey, and they're quite upset, and they've been going to the streets and protesting, and undoubtedly will continue to do so. Your take on this? Why is this happening?
Look, I think this guy's desperate. I think he's losing it. He has jumped the shark on this one. I mean, this is no way that Facebook and Twitter and social media is going to be shut down. I mean, he can't even do it. I mean, so he's starting to sound crazy, and I think this is what's going to tip things in the favor of his opposition, like Mr. Gulen, who is correct, and he's accusing of espionage, which is not true. He basically got caught with corruption. That's his problem. So, well, you know what? If you're going to be corrupt, you're going to do things wrong, you're going to be out. But don't take your social media away. It's not going to work. He's desperate.
And obviously, the election's March 16th of this week. Yeah, so a lot of people are still going to be protesting. So, it's going to be an interesting week to follow. Certainly. Your thoughts?
Dee Dee and I don't always agree on everything, but this is certainly a case where I'm in complete agreement. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to share our opinion on this. Yeah, this is not only Erdogan. This is a party that's deeply affected by its corrupt behavior. And anytime I hear a government that seeks to close down social media or limit the internet, my thoughts don't run to China. My thoughts actually run to the Arab Spring in places like Egypt and Tunisia. Tunisia, I know very well. In the midst of attempts to crack down, these prior dictatorships or authoritarian regimes, they were really just desperate. I mean, they were any measure to somehow limit criticism. And I agree with Dee Dee that this will have very serious consequences at the municipal elections. And I don't know when then the next parliamentary elections are, but this first gateway of elections, I think later this month.
Sebastian, we're taking the temperature. We want to find out what you feel about this.
First of all, it's going to hurt Turkey's, European prospects. The European Union is not going to take it, very easily. As a matter of fact, Turkey had problems opening a negotiation chapter last year, and Germany blocked it for a couple of months, saying because you're taking anti-democracy measures in your country, you're not going to open this. So now he comes out with all this, idea we're going to close down Facebook, and YouTube is definitely not going to help.
Mm-hmm. What do you think is next for the protest movement?
Well, I think where they're moving now is good, because that's the thing. The social media lets them protest. It lets them have these basically flash mobs, and they're not going anywhere. I think they're going to be very effective in outing this guy.
I would be mindful about the strength of social media. Yeah, it's a helpful platform to get some ideas out there, but we have to understand that since the AKP has been in power, they've done a masterful job in hollowing out any other forms of opposition, mostly in the military, the old secular bastion. This is an Islamist party, the AKP. And then other forms of civil society, such that it's really very difficult to amass now some sort of unified opposition. And hopefully they'll be able to use social media. I think it's helpful, but ultimately you have to come up with parties and platforms and ideas to really challenge the ruling party.
But why do you think the AKP and Erdogan, why are they so threatened by this?
You know, it just shows a desperation. He can't do this anyway, but it's just showing that the corruption is growing. You know how it is. I mean, if there's someone does something wrong in office, it's growing and growing and growing that people want him out. So this is a desperate measure. But it was really what he did really hurt himself. I mean, he shot himself in the foot.
Well, but in terms of, if you looked at the Arab Spring and if you look at some politicians, do you think that there is a concern for social media?
Go ahead, but yeah, I think so.
Two things. First of all,
I mean, obviously, it could be positive and negative.
yeah, Didi was right that it's going to hurt him also, you know, in terms of economics, because as a matter of fact, the economy is slowing down, so increasing uncertainty that he's going to close down companies is not really very good. Now, in terms of social media, we have to think about digital diplomacy. They had actually Syria, you know, crisis in Syria going on, and you know, using Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube to broadcast what's going on over here, and put some pressure on the U.S. journalists to keep talking about it. Now, if he wants to cut it off, he, as a matter of fact, you know, takes away a very useful tool for himself, for his society.
I would say it just also shows the institutional weakness on the part of the AKP, that they could equally use Facebook and YouTube
Absolutely.
and all the social media and start their own counteroffensive.
Absolutely, yeah.
And if you're not a
so
player,
they're taking a major a weapon off the table, so to speak.
Exactly.
and I was going to say, I mean, the AKP should be able to utilize it as well. And if you're not a player on social media in this day and age, then you're not going to be a player.
Well, and it's impossible to take it away. It's just not going to happen. Yeah. I mean, it just isn't. In this day and age, I mean, people are going to get the word out, and they're going to get it done one way or the other.
And
I
think Europe's not going to stand for it. I mean, it's questionable whether Turkey should be in the EU anyway. And since the Gezi demonstrations, I mean, we're talking about several years slide into authoritarianism, unfortunately, and this is probably the last expression of desperation.
I agree.
Well, let's talk about the AKP and just exactly what's happened to Turkey in the last couple of years. If you can take that.
I would say,
just a very brief oversight.
Yeah, very brief. This is a country with tremendous economic, geopolitical, and diplomatic influence in the Eastern Mediterranean, and it's a party that could have easily knocked out any opposition, and for the next 10, 15 years really been the ruling party. And instead it's engaged in corruption, and it's engaged in very heavy-handed responses. It's done everything to bring negative attention upon itself rather than expand on its very vibrant economic role and geopolitical role. So it's a squandered opportunity, and that's very unfortunate for an otherwise potential country.
It's also social media. It's also a two-way street. You know, your opposition is going to attack you, but you can use it to, you know, to give away your own message about your own policies. You can use it to your own advantage. He's also, you know, not considering this. So his act was pretty much an act of weakness. He's really scared, and as you know.
Well, at least the president, of course, Abdullah Gül, did say that he would not go along with the prime minister's plan to ban social media. So that was certainly a good note this week.
Yeah, they've knocked heads before a few times. This is not the first time that they've had sort of internal arguments.
And the Turkish people are too smart and sophisticated to allow something like this or someone to try to pull this authoritarian, you know, prank almost. I mean, you know, there's no way that a sophisticated country like Turkey would allow social media just to be banned. It's just not going to happen.
And I did start off the segment. Could you imagine if President Obama tried to do that here? No. I did misspeak before. The elections are actually March 30th in Turkey. What do you think is going to happen for the next month? Where are we going to be? What are we going to be seeing out there?
I think this is going to build and build, and this guy's going to go down the tubes more and more. I think the die is cast, and these elections are going to show that.
I think the opposition will have a tough time reforming because it's been under such tremendous pressure over the last several years. It's been hollowed out. The whole idea of Kemalist secularism has been hollowed out since the AKP has been in power. I believe they'll have a hard time. They have now a weak target, and hopefully they can start to reclaim some of the municipalities for themselves, and then in the larger parliamentary elections really launch a united front.
And certainly a country in transition. They were such an economic rising star for 10 years. So it will certainly be interesting to watch Turkey. Sebastian?
The government may lose support of younger people. As a matter of fact, everybody uses Facebook or Twitter right now. That's the way they connect with the European Union and all the standards and ideals of the European Union. Take it away from them. What are they going to do? They're going to go into the streets and protest.
Well, I mean, look, when you have a strong country, you can have a bad leader for a while, but, you know, the Turks are tough. I mean, they'll spring back from some of this bad leadership and corruption. It'll be fine.
I mean, I think the thing that we're watching this week and this month until March 30th is hopefully that none of these protests get violent, as we've seen in many of the countries overseas. So certainly we're hoping that it remains peaceful.
I'm not so sure. I mean, if they do actually make some bolder statements and they try to pass this law, the Gezi demonstrations were in part about just green spaces in Istanbul. Now, this is a fundamental right of any functioning democracy to have a free and transparent media. So you take that away, I think there would be really massive protests. And judging by past behavior, we shouldn't always do that. But the way that Erdogan has dealt with demonstrations in the past, I foresee a very heavy hand again.
But we're seeing the heavy hand in Russia as well. I mean, in terms of the media, social media, or just the mainstream media, we're seeing a lot of abuses of freedom of speech.
You know, these dictators in the past were able to get away with it because they didn't have social media. I think social media is the best thing that ever happened for democracy. So, you know, it's very, whenever you shut down the message, it's much easier to control people. But it's, you know, you can't do it anymore with social media, so thank goodness we have it. So that's exactly what they're trying to do. When he starts losing control, they start to take away freedoms. They start to take away freedom of speech, first and foremost.
Usually out of fear.
That's right. They're desperate.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, to what extent social media is a promoter of democracy, that's debatable. I mean, at least free media is a part of any democratic culture. That's sort of one of the foundations that we'd like to see when a country's transitioning.
But you have to agree, it makes it more difficult for a dictator to dictate.
Yeah, but then it makes it very easy for other less democratic forces to also have a voice. So it becomes not a free-for-all.
I don't think that's bad, though. I think it's good for everyone to have a voice.
I'm not sure.
Again, if you go back to the Arab Spring, though, and you look at how the young people were able to organize and eventually take to the streets, is there sometimes that it may not be a good thing? I mean,
I think it's good. I mean, democracy is messy, and but it's better than the alternative. Right,
but ultimately, the countries that will do the best in the Arab Spring are those that weren't only Facebook revolutions, right? These are really the only clear example we have of a potential success story is Tunisia. And why is Tunisia a potential success story? Well, it's the most secular of the North African countries. It has introduces legislation that is very respectful for women inclusion in all aspects of society and the economy. And ultimately, it has a very vibrant, both religious and secular civil society, which is not the case in many other Middle Eastern and North African countries. So social media helps get the message out, but you still need to have institutions ultimately.
I would also question the wisdom of this, because in Maduro in Venezuela, he pretty much did the same thing. He censoring Twitter. Is not really helping. He still has protests, still young people go on the streets, so there's really not that much wisdom in this.
Yeah, you can't take away Twitter and Facebook to a teenager or even a young person, so I don't think it's going to work whether it's
Try to take it away from Dee Dee.
Oh, forget it. There'll be a fight for sure.
I don't think it's going to work here. Thanks so much, Sebastian, for being on the show. And we've got much more to come, including a look at a protest right here in the U.S. about a commencement speaker. We'll be back with more on that story in just 2 minutes.